This is Mr. Eugene, and today we're talking about a marriage where the wife won't even touch her husband, let alone give him physical intimacy. I'm talking about situations where there was a time when she enjoyed intimacy as much as he did. Now she acts like he's repulsive and intimacy is beneath her, so she refuses him completely. How does this even happen? A man and woman get together and can't keep their hands off each other. But as soon as the ink dries on their marriage certificate, so does she. Why is this? The answer is straightforward. She lost respect for her man. And women very rarely sleep with men they don't respect. Wait, he's the same guy he's always been, right? Not to the woman who's now just a roommate. This is destructive female psychology, of course. But let me try to explain. Women want to feel like they're winning with the man that they have. If she does, he receives everything she has, including intimacy. Now, a man with a supportive, loving woman receives what he needs so consistently that he wins, which meets her respect requirements. But of course, there's the average modern woman. Her approach is different. She chooses to break her husband down as much as possible. To do this, she starts off small, then increases her use of hurtful words. And if he accepts them, this causes her to lose respect for him. I don't have to take this any longer. You'll take everything I have to give. You always have. I mean, does anyone really think that this guy is having intimacy? Another way these women tear down their men to gain control is to challenge them constantly. I think they're called fitness tests. When he fails one of these tests, her respect for him decreases a little bit. Fail enough times and he's in the friend zone, even if they're married. A few more failures and he goes into the enemy she despises category. Yes, you understand that's a real thing. We've all witnessed it. But what's the purpose of these tests? On the surface, absolutely nothing. If we examine a little deeper, it seems that women perpetually want to see if he is strong enough to handle her. In her mind, if he's too weak to deal with her, then he's too weak to deal with the world, which again to her means that he's a low-value man. So why do quality men fall for these tests? For the worst reason possible, actually. Not because he is crude or uncaring, but because a quality man will do his best to make his wife happy and take care of her needs. Normal women will appreciate the intention and be grateful. However, the women we're discussing will use his goodness to manipulate him. For instance, I really want that luxury purse, which implies she is unhappy without it. Or, I wouldn't be so stressed if I could take that girl's trip to the Caribbean, which implies she is currently suffering, and his wife's suffering or being unhappy will never happen on his watch. This is how easily a man with good intentions gets into the disrespect phases of marriage, also known as the no intimacy zone. But let's be brutally honest about what's really happening here. This isn't just about respect declining. This is about power dynamics fundamentally shifting in the relationship. When you were dating, she needed you. She needed your attention, your commitment, your validation. Her behavior reflected that need. She was affectionate, responsive, engaged. Intimacy was frequent because it served her purpose, securing you. Once you married her, the dynamic inverted. Now you need her. You've committed legally, financially, emotionally. You've built your life around her presence. And she understands this shift completely. This is when the testing begins. Not because she's genuinely evaluating your strength, but because she's establishing how much control she can exert now that you're locked in. Every test you fail isn't actually about weakness. It's about compliance. She's training you to prioritize her approval over your own judgment, to seek her validation, to modify your behavior based on her reactions. And here's the cruel part. The more you comply, the less she respects you. Because compliance signals that you need her approval more than she needs yours. And women are biologically wired to be repulsed by men they perceive as lower value than themselves. This is why the nice guy who does everything right ends up in a dead bedroom. Not because he's doing things wrong, but because doing everything she wants signals that her approval is your highest priority. And a man whose highest priority is female approval is not a man she wants intimately. Think about when she was most attracted to you. Probably early in the relationship when you had other options, when you had boundaries, when you weren't bending over backwards to please her. When you had a life that didn't revolve around managing her emotions, that version of you didn't need her validation. That version of you had standards. That version of you would have walked away if she disrespected you. And that version of you generated attraction because he was operating from abundance, not scarcity. The moment you shifted into trying to make her happy at all costs, you signaled scarcity. You signaled that keeping her was more important than keeping your self-respect. And attraction died. Now let's discuss the tests themselves, because understanding what they actually are changes everything. When she says something disrespectful and watches your reaction, she's not testing if you're strong enough to handle the world. She's testing if you'll tolerate disrespect. If you accept it, You've just taught her that disrespecting you has no consequences. When she creates drama over something trivial and escalates until you apologize just to end it, she's not testing your patience. She's testing if she can control you through emotional manipulation. If you cave, you've just taught her that manufacturing crisis gets her what she wants. When she threatens to withhold affection or creates distance and observes if you chase, she's not testing your commitment. She's testing if you'll sacrifice your dignity to win back her approval. If you chase, you've just taught her that withdrawal is an effective control mechanism. Every test is about establishing the power hierarchy. And every time you prioritize peace over principle, you're reinforcing that she's the authority and you're the supplicant. This is why intimacy disappears. Because intimacy requires mutual respect, and you can't respect someone you've trained to accept disrespect. She can't desire someone she's successfully dominated. It's biologically impossible. Female attraction is triggered by perceived status and strength. A man she can control is a man she can't desire. So what actually reverses this dynamic? Not communication, not trying harder, not being more understanding. Those approaches just reinforce the problem because they're all forms of seeking her approval. What reverses it is reestablishing yourself as a man who doesn't need her approval. A man who has standards and enforces them. A man who will walk away from disrespect rather than tolerate it. This doesn't mean being cruel or vindictive. It means having boundaries that protect your dignity and consequences when those boundaries are violated. When she says something disrespectful, you don't argue. You don't defend. You simply disengage. You remove your presence because you don't participate in interactions where you're not respected. When she manufactures drama, you don't chase her approval by apologizing for things you didn't do wrong. You remain calm and let her experience the natural consequence of her behavior. You withdrawing your engagement. When she threatens to withhold affection, you don't beg or negotiate. You demonstrate through your actions that you're perfectly content whether she participates or not. Because a man with options doesn't negotiate for scraps. This sounds harsh. It sounds like game playing, but it's not. It's simply refusing to participate in a dynamic where your dignity is the cost of temporary peace. Here's what will happen when you stop failing her tests. Initially, she'll escalate. Because the old methods aren't working anymore, she's trying to reestablish control. Is the critical moment. If you cave during escalation, you've just taught her that she needs to push harder to get compliance. If you remain firm, something shifts. She begins to recognize that the power dynamic has changed, that you're no longer negotiating from scarcity, that you have standards she needs to meet if she wants your continued investment. And paradoxically, this is when attraction can return, not because you played games, but because you stopped being controllable, because you reasserted yourself as a man who values his own respect more than her temporary approval. Will this work with every woman? No. Some women are so committed to the control dynamic that they'll choose to destroy the marriage rather than submit to mutual respect. If that's who you're married to, this process will simply reveal it faster. But for women who are testing because they're genuinely trying to determine if you're strong enough to lead, reestablishing boundaries demonstrates exactly what they're looking for. A man who cannot be manipulated. Now, what can be done to override this destructive path? First, establish that these patterns actually exist in your marriage. Look at the evidence, honestly. Is she testing you? Are you failing by prioritizing her approval over your dignity? Next, understand what value is expected from such choices. What are you actually getting from accepting disrespect? Temporary peace? Is that worth the permanent loss of attraction and intimacy? 3. Are the desired results obvious? If you want respect and desire, does accepting disrespect get you there? Obviously not. 4. What are the actual outcomes? You get temporary peace at the cost of permanent attraction. You avoid conflict at the cost of intimacy. You keep her from being upset in the moment at the cost of her long-term desire. 5. How does the relationship look in 5 years if these patterns continue? You become roommates. The intimacy never returns. The disrespect increases because you've taught her it works. You live in quiet resentment while she lives in contempt. 6. How do you get the actual desired goals in the marriage? By reestablishing yourself as a man who will not tolerate disrespect, by having boundaries and enforcing them, by valuing your own dignity more than her temporary approval. 7. How does the relationship look in 5 years if you actually do the things that get the desired results? You have a wife who respects you because you respect yourself. Intimacy returns because attraction returns. You have actual partnership instead of a power struggle. 8. Pick which life looks better to both of you and commit to it. Lastly, each set a reminder to reinforce your new patterns with each other. For instance, I have used, I am peaceful and accountable. Now, after sticking to this plan for a while, the woman will receive what she actually wants. the man she loves and respects. And when respect returns, so does intimacy. But understand this. You cannot negotiate desire. You cannot logic someone into wanting you. You cannot communicate your way out of a dynamic where you've become the lower status partner. You can only demonstrate through your actions that you are a man worth respecting. And sometimes that demonstration requires being willing to lose her approval in order to keep your dignity. Because a marriage where you've sacrificed your self-respect for peace is not a marriage worth keeping. It's just a prison where you've convinced yourself the bars are there for your protection. If you're living this reality, understand you're not alone. Millions of married men are experiencing the same disrespect, the same testing, the same dead bedroom. And the reason it continues is because they keep prioritizing her approval over their own dignity. They keep failing tests because they think being accommodating is the path to intimacy. It's not. The path to intimacy is mutual respect, and respect requires boundaries. Drop your experience in the comments. Are you living in a dead bedroom? Have you reestablished respect? What changed? And if this resonated, like and subscribe. This channel exists to speak truth about marriage dynamics that nobody else will say, to validate experiences that get dismissed, and to remind men that wanting respect in your own marriage isn't asking too much. The truth might be uncomfortable, but it's far less damaging than living in quiet desperation wondering why your wife won't touch you.